Hello YouTube, welcome to my channel. I'm new in these spaces. My name is Coach Tabo, and on this channel we'll be discussing football in the main. However, every once in a while or now and then I'll be discussing political and social issues. But the main purpose of this channel is to talk football and reach out to all you passionate folks, guys who are passionate about the game we love so much. So yeah, let's get started. As you all know, we're currently enjoying the World Cup, 2026 World Cup hosted in the United States. Bafana unfortunately have been knocked out. But the main point of this video is to reflect on how Bafana did at the World Cup. Not just at the World Cup, but also how they've been doing in the last year or two under coach Hugo Broos. Guys, for those who are passionate about football, who follow the game, especially on the international front, on the international scene, you guys would know that it is generally it's a habit or a pattern, a norm. The norm rather is the norm that for teams that are dominant in domestic leagues in all the countries, teams that are supremely dominant tend to dominate the national team setup. Now, in the last 2 years, we have seen the bulk of our national team players coming from Mamelodi Sundowns football club, and it's something we were not really accustomed to. It was for the first time I think we had a lot of our squad coming from majority of our squad players coming from one team. Previously, our squad is always came from a host of different clubs, which I think it made sense. It made sense. Like I said, it is the norm. However, people started coming up with conspiracy theories. All negativities started coming out of, all corners, where people starting to even suggest that Dr. Patrice Motsepe had bribed SAFA or some nonsense like that, just so that Sundowns players can be predominantly selected to play for Bafana, which for me makes no sense. If Sundowns, as dominant as they've been, with the dominance they've achieved, they've enjoyed rather, end up having majority of their players in our squad, I see no problem with that. Like I said, it is the norm. And for people to be negative about that, for me, shows just how backward we still are as far as our concept is concerned regarding the national team, what it represents. The national team is not a democratic exercise. It is to some extent. Don't get me wrong. It is. However, if you have one team that is so dominant that it wins the league 7-8 years in a row, that should tell you something about the quality of the team in relation to competition it faces, the rest of the PSL. And if the PSL cannot mount a challenge to Mamelodi Sundowns, then I see no reason as why to Sundowns should have majority of its players competing being selected rather for our national team. And also not to mention that Sundowns has been doing pretty well, continentally. The respect that people have for Sundowns, I think currently Sundowns is arguably the most feared team on the continent. Yes, sure, they haven't won as many Champions Leagues as maybe they should have, but that's besides the point. Because ultimately, Champions League football is quite competitive. Now, coming back to the point, at the national, at this currently unfolding World Cup, Coach Broos decided to do away with Mamelodi Sundowns as back four, and I was one of the people who was criticizing that a lot. I felt like he was taking the team backward. I was not particularly happy, I'll be honest, with the inclusion of, rather with starting with Mbokazi at centre back, with Ngezane at AFCON. And I think there it backfired, because I'm still not convinced that Ngezane is better than the centre back pairing of Mamelodi Sundowns. Even with Mbokazi, I was not so convinced. I felt like our build-up play was not the same anymore. And if you guys remember well, at AFCON, the recent AFCON that we were eliminated at by Egypt, the dominance that we had become accustomed to on the ball was not the same. The controlled tempo was not the same, because the understanding between Mudiba, Modao, as Sundowns as fullbacks, with their goalkeeper, which is Rowan, and their two centre back, I feel like it compromised our build-up play. Hence, Mbokazi tended to always rush the ball, playing the ball forward prematurely. And to some extent, I think maybe that was a coaching instruction. And now, going into this World Cup, my doubts were informed by our exit at AFCON. Not just our exit, but the way we played. I felt like Coach Bros had tinkered too much or interfered too much with the team. However, we did very well at the World Cup. I'm willing to, swallow my pride and admit that Mbokazi was arguably our best player. No, he was actually our best player there. The young man did very well. However, I'm still of the opinion that, for me, Mamelodi Sundowns squad should continue to dominate us. And I just feel that in the last 2 years, in as much as I respect Coach Bros, his success is largely due to the success of Mamelodi Sundowns. Does that mean that permanently Sundowns should always have players there in the main? No. Theoretically, what I'm trying to say is that any team that dominates football in its league, any team, and for long periods, like season after season after season, that team should, by definition, have majority of its players in the national setup. We saw that with Egypt, with that team of Al Ahly, Abu Trika. Germany does that. Spain does that. Even now, as we speak, majority of Spain players came from Barcelona. And it has been the norm with Barcelona, especially in the last 15 years or so, because of the way they play. So there's nothing wrong there. Now, I just want us to, perhaps as a footballing nation, reflect on this and what it means to have one team dominate our local scene so much. For me, it doesn't really matter how Sundowns has come to dominate it, whether it's the money, signing South American players. I get all that. But ultimately, if Sundowns dominates the league with impunity, then they earn every right to have their players dominate the national team. And like I said, in as much as I respect Coach Bros, I still feel that moving forward, this should be the done thing. We can't afford to play democracy with the national team. Now, point number 2, I want to touch on what Coach Bros did in the opening match of against Mexico, where he played a back five. What has happened is that the second game, we played a 1-0 draw. The performance improved. Obviously, the formation had changed and our attacking players were put back into the starting lineup. And also the third game, which we ended up winning against South Korea. Now, the problem is, once Bafana beat South Korea, people started saying, why did we criticize Bros? We must swallow our words and whatnot. That's not how it works. Regardless of what happened after that, Coach Bros was wrong to do what he did, because there was no need for us to fear Mexico the way that we did. Because the question I was asking myself is that if we can fear Mexico to that extent, then what are we going to do against the big boys of the tournament, the stronger nations, your France, your Brazil, your Spain? And I would argue that continentally, we as South Africa and Mexico, on a continental level, we are not that different. There's nothing dominant about Mexico. They don't dominate that continent as much as we think they do. So there was no need for Coach Bros to go there and, in a way, send a wrong message about our height of fear regarding participating in that tournament. It put us in a bad place, and I feel that Czech Republic in that second game approached us with the mindset that we are not as good as we think. So for that, I think the criticism that was leveled against Coach Bros was very legitimate. But having said that, we did very well. Bafana played well, and I just hope whoever comes into the national team setup, the next coach, will maintain this idea that majority of our players should come from one dominant local team. That is just my personal opinion. Now, third item on the list would be the incoming coach, whoever that coach is. I've started to see this pattern recently whereby younger coaches are starting to be roped into the international scene, which I fundamentally disagree with. I've always viewed the national team, well, actually traditionally it has always been viewed that way, that the national team is the exclusive preserve of older guys, more experienced coaches, guys who've done club football for more than 10, even 20 years. But recently we've seen now with Julian Nagelsmann taking over Germany, and he recently resigned after being knocked out. And then before Coach Bose took over, locally some people were calling for Benny McCarthy to, even Rulani Mukwena, to be the coach of Bafana. I'm a huge fan of Rulani. For me, he will arguably go down as the greatest coach we've ever produced. But I do not agree with the idea that he or Benny should be coaching Bafana. I would argue that Pito Mosimane, not for the same reasons as most people would do. I don't rate Pito as highly as people do, but he's an excellent coach. He's a good coach. And given the experience he has had, not just locally, but even abroad, he's better placed to lead Bafana into the future. I don't see how a younger coach would do it, no matter how talented. Bafana, a national team setup is so important that you cannot risk giving it some to a younger coach who's here to prove himself, which is the case with both Benny McCarthy and Coach Rulani Mokwena. Previously, we had coaches. Of course, we didn't have success, but that cannot just come down to the coaches. I think it's well known that our governing football body has not really covered itself in glory. So the failures of Bafana cannot only just come down to the failures of these coaches. However, having said that, I still think moving forward that our national team must exclusively be coached by people with years and years and years and years of experience. That is fundamental to me. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Let's have a chat about it in the comments. Let's have fun. Let's keep it clean. And like I said, welcome to my channel. Hopefully we're going to have a lovely time on this channel. Yeah, thanks a lot. Perhaps maybe, I'm not sure just how many episodes I'll be shooting, how frequent, but the idea is that maybe perhaps just one episode per week, or even two, depending on what's happening. Like I said, like I indicated earlier in the beginning of the video, it won't just be football that will be discussed here. There'll be political and social issues. So sometimes, depending on what's happening, certain topics will maybe force me to upload a video on a given topic, given the unfolding events in this country, whether it's international or local. All right. No, thanks a lot, gents. See you next time. Peace.